Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to episode 14 of my Politics 2100 video channel here on YouTube. And this is another episode that will be sort of a building block. Maybe I should call it sort of primary concepts or crucial concepts. And in this episode, I'm calling it episode 14, Chris Arnade's Front Row, Back Row Kids, Distinction, and American Politics and Culture. So Chris Arnade is an American photographer, former Wall Street analyst and trader who has a PhD in physics, but was what's so-called quant on Wall Street, used his mathematics background to help trades, help Wall Street firms make more money, and then he decided that he didn't like doing that anymore, and he wrote an essay called Divided by Meaning, which appeared on Medium in 2016, which then became a book called Dignity, and it's a photo essay about two different kinds of America, or at least sort of a left behind part of the United States, and is reflecting on it. And he came up with this concept called front row kids and back row kids, which maybe some of you have encountered it in actually his writing, or also just reflections on it. So it's a very important idea, I think, for understanding the different bases of the political parties, particularly now in the era of Trump and the sort of right-wing populism now becoming neo-fascism. And so the idea is that basically there are two cultures in the United States that are becoming increasingly divided, increasingly geographically separated. And one is the culture of front row kids and the other of back row kids. And it's a recollection, or it's a reflection upon school seating in schoolrooms where, informally, not necessarily in actual physical fact, but there are kids who, if they were interested in the subject matter, who they felt like they were academics was something that would lead to an improvement in their lives, or they actually were intellectually interested in the subject matter the teacher was teaching, they would go toward the front row, or they would act as if they were in the front row, and they would become maybe even teachers' pets, not necessarily, but at least they would be on the same path as a teacher in terms of the same task orientation as a teacher in terms of learning something about some matter that was being part of the curriculum. And then back row kids are kids who, for a variety of reasons, do not either want to engage with the teacher's plan for learning, for improvement, self-improvement via, acquisition of knowledge and skills through learning in a schoolroom. They hang out in the back row. They might actually, try to undermine and act out or undermine the process in the classroom, or just they might have resentments about the front row kids, and they might feel like they're goody two-shoes, or any number of different other schoolyard taunts that you might have encountered or heard of, and that those two groups, it's not a strict class divide. So in the back row, you can find kids that are from wealthy backgrounds, or at least middle class backgrounds, as well as also finding kids who come from backgrounds where they were marginalized or economically disadvantaged groups, or just families, and they didn't have the also just they for whatever reason they weren't good at academics. Many kids also have learning disabilities, which is independent of it can be independent of economics or intelligence in general. The general way to think about that, the classical ways to think about that. So anyway, so this is a good way to understand, at least on a maybe superficial or maybe also on a deeper level, the way in which Donald Trump appealed to people in the United States, but even before him, you had a culture of on the right wing, even before he became a major political figure, you had a culture of a right wing that basically makes fun of what you might call the front row kids in adult life. So people who are reading something and learning something about a new thing, and then they change their lifestyle. They do new things. They eat they eat in institutions that are not the institutions that were existing when we were children, because they decide, I like Thai food, I'm going to a Thai food restaurant, or they are open to a new experience, and they're learning about the world, and they are in that way good students of life, and the right wing has taken to seeing that group of people as being in some way alien to their base, or the people they're appealing to, where they mock them, they laugh at them. These are soy boys, or any number of different other epithets that they use to try to raise up the self-esteem of the people who are change averse, often change averse in the back row. And so I just want to, and Donald Trump as an individual, though, even though this preexisted his political career, he apparently, I think, speculatively, he had some kind of learning disability, or has some kind of learning disability, and is also not a brilliant person in any. I mean, I don't know. He doesn't. He in certain respects he seems very unintelligent. In other respects, he seems quite intelligent. So, speculatively, he may have had a learning disability, but he acted certainly, whatever is going on in his wiring in his head, he acted in a way, and acts and appeals to as if he's a member of this back row, as if he's a member of the people who are spitballing and at the pointy-headed, academically gifted or academically competent people in the front row, who aren't necessarily the wealthiest people. They're not necessarily the people who are working in white-collar jobs. They could be working also in a blue-collar job, but they are have a positive attitude about learning, and they have a positive attitude about progress, that things can progress and that they can learn new things, and then the circumstances of life could change for the better. And so in the back row, there's more of a circular idea about and a fatalistic idea about progress and about change. And so anyway, so this is if you look at the way that Fox News, for instance, covers politics, they are appealing to a back row sensibility. They're appealing, and also not only politics, culture in general. And I just want to, turning back to Arnade's work, and his photo essays and his writing. He documented this culture of in the back row, in certain aspects of it, or and it jives with other observations, or many observations about the just statistically, not just opinions or subjective observations by observers, but that the American society is becoming more polarized in terms of education levels, in terms of by geography as well. So in other words, there are really almost places that are back row places. Though, I mean, they can coexist in a city like New York. They can coexist in these two different cultures. They can coexist in the same company, and so or the same workplace or the same organization. But you do see that, and it's often this segmentation by income and by interest in learning and change, and there is a psychological concept which I'll add to this, which is called openness to experience. So there's a 5-factor model of personality. It's quite a well researched, and it's a general model of, and it's basically what they did is the researchers looked at how cultures describe other people. In other words, how people use words like he's a happy person, he's a he's a depressive person, they're a confident person, there are all the words that are used in different languages. And they did a what's called a factor analysis, and they find there were 5 major factors in the way cultures describe people. And one of these factors is this kind of vague sounding idea called openness to experience, one of the 5 factors. And so openness to experience is either, it's a factor, so you can be either high or low on it. So it seems as though this front row, back row idea maps pretty strongly to people who are either low on openness to experience or high on openness to experience, as being, not universally, but and it is probably that's. I haven't actually looked at studies, but it might. I suspect that the being high in openness to experience is associated with left of center political engagement, and the opposite is true of people who are low on it, openness to experience. But anyway, as you might see, or the political, the basis of the political parties. I mean, it's not again a class. I want to make clear that this is not a class distinction, because there are people who from the back row, in other words, there are people who identify with the culture of this back row, who then go on to success in numbers of fields, in all kinds of areas of work, and they can accumulate lots of money, and they could become sometimes Republican donors or whatever, or supporters of the Republican Party, or and so it's not a success in school or interest in this interested in the academic. That's why I hesitated to say that openness to experience is exactly this political, has a political mapping. But so there are people who use non-school learning to succeed very well in the world, and it's I'm not siding with the idea that school learning is crucial for success necessarily, but it does seem as though our politics, unfortunately, has divided along these lines, where you have people who identify with the Democratic Party essentially, and they're very, very typical front row kids, and the front row, and they often, and this is something I object to, as a culture, that they have a haughty disregard for the other kinds of knowledge and learning that one does from not even one is for whatever reason not good at school, but one learns through experience, with tools, or in business, or with just interacting with people, which is something that school does not teach. Okay, and so I'm wanting to make sure that I'm not siding with one of these rows, and I am a front row kid in terms of my what was I like in school relative to some other people, but I see the deficit of understanding and of empathy that I think Arnade was trying to overcome with his work, and also and it has become a political problem for that the sort of centrist democratic base tends to be have a very snobbish disregard for these other kinds of experience that the Republicans feign and the right wing feigns. They pretend that they understand by their rhetoric. So they're mobilized by that rhetoric to think they're on my side. The right wing is on my side, and the left wing, or not the left, but the Democratic Party, center right, center left establishment acts as if that's the wrong kind of they're the wrong kind of people, that they look down upon them, and that has become a political liability for that party and for the Democratic Party, and it has become the strength of the Republican Party has been to mobilize cultural resentment from people who, for a variety of reasons, feel that book learning and knowledge are things that you make fun of, and not things that are valuable. So anyway, this is an introduction to this topic. I hope to be using this idea, or in some future videos. It's kind of a preface to some other thoughts I might have about very particular incidents, but I think it's a very critical concept in American culture and American politics. And I'm remembering, so it's also part of it is also our anti-intellectualism. There I'm taking a side. I'm saying we should be more front row when I say anti-intellectualism, but I don't think the current stalemate between front row and back row, cultural stalemate and also political stalemate, is the way to improve our evaluation of intellectual work and intellectual achievement. Anyway, I'll stop there, and to be continued. So if you like this video, please like it, and if you enjoy this channel, please subscribe. And I also put links in the description box that are relevant to what I was referring to Arnade's work. And I'll see you in the next video.